Welcome, friends, countrymen, fellow YouTubers. Lend us your ears as we discuss today's film, The French Dispatch.
It began as a holiday. Eager to escape a bright future on the Great Plains, Arthur Howitzer Jr. transformed the series of travelogue columns into The French Dispatch.
Leave a comment. I'm curious to hear what people think about this movie because I think there have been a lot of different opinions going around.
Yeah, weird. Very odd.
I feel like that happens a lot with Wes Anderson's films.
Yeah, but this
one more so than usual is a bit all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chandler has a vague idea of what I think, but I
don't think I do.
Might have misled him.
I don't know. It's impossible to not at least like a Wes Anderson movie.
Sure. But we're both discussing this film for the first time. I watched it last night for the first time, so this is both fresh and I haven't had too much time to think about it. Chandler has had plenty of time.
2 weeks.
Did you watch it again?
About 2 weeks. No, my brother wants to watch it, so he's been out of town, so I'm waiting for him to come back to watch it.
Okay.
Which sucks because it's about to leave theaters. It's already on its way out, unfortunately. But yes, The French Dispatch. Hold on, let me get my intro.
Yes, please. Chandler will intro the film so you know what we're talking about. Gonna do a better job.
I wrote it down. So
great.
The French Dispatch is an anthology film directed by Wes Anderson that centers around the titular French Dispatch, a newspaper that is about to release its final issue following the death of its creator/editor, Arthur Howitzer Jr. It features a cast of literally everyone as it presents its various stories, articles, and columns in vignette form, boasting changing aspect ratios, both color and black and white, and animated segments.
A factual weekly report on the subjects of world politics, the arts, high and low, and diverse stories of human interest.
You don't think it's almost too seedy this time?
No, I don't.
For decent people.
It's supposed to be charming.
Oh, Wes Anderson. I feel like we could... I don't know. I saw a review the other day that said Wes Anderson is the most unique voice in American comedy since Preston Sturges. And I disagree with this statement on multiple levels, and yet I agree with it. The first off is that Preston Sturges was not a unique voice in American cinema because we've forgotten about him as a director. And if he was that unique, we wouldn't
I don't
forget.
even know who that is.
There you go. See,
I don't know the fuck
his films are painfully classic Hollywood. Sure, the comedy itself could have a unique voice, but you need, I think, in order for a director to truly have a unique voice, you need to have a unique visual style as well.
I agree.
It's a visual medium. You can't just have a unique way of writing dialogue. That's not how that works. Wes Anderson, I think, is the most unique director America has produced.
Yeah, speaking purely in a visual style, there are very few directors. Yeah. There are very few directors where you can literally look at one frame and be like, I know exactly who that is.
He is the American version of Ozu or Godard or these kinds of directors that are like you know them. Their style is kind of a world unto themselves. And we have better directors, maybe depending on your opinion, but like Orson Welles is a pretty unique guy, but he has a very like classical way of filming that a lot of people have followed over the years. And so it has become less unique over time, not necessarily his fault. But his films don't like stand out as like really unique aesthetic expressions in the way that something like Wes Anderson or Ozu might. Even though like they're still really quality. That's not a mark of quality.
Yeah.
And Wes Anderson is certainly I'm not sure anyone else comes close in terms of like directors that are so fully American in the way that they do stuff, and yet also unique and completely unlike anything else that
that's the thing.
Anyone else who works in Hollywood.
Even know if I necessarily say Wes Anderson's style is American. Feels more European to me than anything, especially this movie.
See, I don't think
the iconography of his movies are very European.
I think he's American in the sense that he is an American director, and it, especially when you have Hollywood and European films particularly are essentially so interlinked in terms of like cross-cultural that like there's not much of a difference. Like when I say American, I mean he's just a American director, not necessarily like
yeah.
something quintessentially like small town American kind of director, which
Which is
like
interesting because
Kelly
he
Reichardt
is
might be one of the most American directors I think working today in terms of like really like
today
small town, like actual grounded American. But that not the point. The point is Hollywood produced a director like Wes Anderson. He is a product of this film market. And he is making really interesting, unique films and somehow still getting funding and actors and everything and power
insane
to
amounts
him.
of actors. Yes. Well, I don't even know where you start with this.
He assembled a team of the best expatriate journalists of his time: Berenson, Sazerac, Kremens, Roebuck Wright. These were his people.
Well, I guess you could just start with your opening thoughts of I liked it or didn't.
Oh, well, I fucking love it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. Because the Wes Anderson movies that I don't like, which the only two, are the ones that I feel like are all... I hate saying style over substance because
what are those two?
Moonrise Kingdom and Steve Zissou. I don't like either of those. And Moonrise Kingdom more so. Steve Zissou, I have an asterisk by my not liking it. Because I feel like if I give it a second watch, I will probably like it. Moonrise Kingdom, I've given many chances I don't like. Because the reason I don't like Moonrise Kingdom is that I feel like the style is so dominant that there's not really much else to hold on to emotionally, story-wise. There's not a character I enjoy. This story doesn't really do much for me. And everything I saw from this where I'm like, this is fucking wild. There's black and white. There's different aspect ratios. There's like, it's a vignette. There's a fuck ton of characters. I thought there's no way that this is going to be as resonant as some of his previous stuff. This feels more like a style exercise, but he's going so far with it that I thought, okay, that's fine. I was so delightfully surprised that I felt that this was really one of his most emotionally resonant. I was surprised at how much I felt watching this movie, despite the fact that it has like 30... There's not even a main character. The main character is the paper. The anthology thing is not just like, story after story after story. It's all structured around this final issue of this paper, where each of the vignettes are different articles in the paper. There's technically 5, but there's only 3 big ones.
Yeah. I think this is a film that does the anthology idea correctly in that it is a film with an overarching plot, an overarching idea, but is filled with anthology stories that all link together very specifically. I agree with a lot of what you just said. And this is one of the movies where I was kind of forced to watch the trailer because I went to the Loft so many times and they were just playing it. I'm not going to get up from the Loft. I mean, it's a pain in the ass. It's not like other theaters like AMC where you have the big reclining chairs and you have room. If you get up, you're not going to be bothering people in the aisle. So I'm fine running out of the theater when the Licorice Pizza trailer comes on, not bothering anyone with that action. Although I did get a weird look from the people sitting to my left.
Well, because you closed your eyes, you put your fingers in your ear, and you started shouting, right?
La 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 la. Yeah, no. But I had a similar. I didn't really absorb a lot of the trailers. Like I just kind of like glazed over. Like, okay, it's another Wes Anderson film. I'm gonna watch it. I don't want to put any of this to memory to ruin the new, fresh experience. So as much as possible, having watched the trailer a couple times, I went in fairly blind. I had a similar kind of reaction as you did, except it was within the space of the film itself. Not like, so how you were like going into it is like, oh, this is going to be a lot of style over substance. And you weren't sure how much you were going to like it. I was, about 1/3 of the way through the film. I was like, this is a lot of style. This might be the most stylish Wes Anderson film. I'm not sure how invested I am in any of this. And about 2/3 of the way through the film, I was like, oh, this is fine. I'm not sure where it stands, but and then I got to the end. And I don't know, despite all of my reservations, and I do have some, it was a very effective piece of work. And I was emotionally affected at the end. And I was thinking back as I was watching the trailer, not the trailer, the credits. It's like, I think that really worked as a film altogether. I don't think I was particularly necessarily engaged all the time, but whatever it was, it all added up to something really special and something really unique. And it was certainly a heck of a lot of style. I think maybe too much in certain areas. I think it would have benefited, and maybe the style wasn't necessarily the issue, but it would have benefited from some grounding in some of the stories that I felt they were too a little manic, like cutting one place to another before it had established some of the basic who, what, when, where, why kind of stuff. I felt like I could have had a better grasp on some stuff before it started doing all this kind of.
But to me, that's like part of the appeal, because never before, I mean, I watch all Wes Anderson movies a lot, but this one, I was so excited to watch it a second time because it's so fucking dense. There's one
I'm
scene,
getting more excited for a second viewing.
Yeah, there's one scene at the beginning in particular where I thought, am I even going to be able to process this? It's the scene where the guy is preparing Walter Howardson Jr.'s meal. And it's like a scene where he's like moving the tray, and he's pouring the wine, he's getting the cheese, and like all that is happening. It's this really intricate little this set piece where he's preparing this meal, all while we're getting a very detailed backstory of this character. I'm like, I can't focus on both of these at once.
Yeah, so that's the thing I'm talking about. Like, it was a bit too much, and you needed to be able to grasp onto some of these things a little easier. Like, it needed to be a little quieter in a few of the basic storytelling moments, so it could then kick into high gear of the aesthetic, stylistic moments, and you're already on board. You don't need to understand more. You're already grounded.
Yeah, but for me, like, I can see how people think that that's like overwhelming, but when I see that, I don't feel overwhelmed. I just think there's a lot to unpack here. I'm excited to watch it again because, like, God, that whole. So there's 5 stories, basically. There's the eulogy at the beginning for Arthur Howitzer Jr., which basically is the setup for the whole movie. Explains who he was, what the paper's all about, who works there, whatever. And then there's the next vignette, which is like completely separate from everything, but I just love it, which is just Owen Wilson bicycling through the town, where he goes full Jacques Tati.
Exhaust pollution, the dangerous accidents, the constant traffic, the high...
It's great. It's the segment I might be most looking forward to watching again, because there are so many details.
You can't like process all of it. That one more than anything. Like the scene where ennui comes to life, where like it literally goes from still empty streets to bustling town in the span of like 30 seconds.
This is a movie where like it made me roll my eyes at some points at the beginning, where it's like, oh, this is too much style. And like that shot you were talking about with the going around in the I was like, okay. And like, I was feeling a little annoyed with Wes Anderson, and yet it won me over as the film went on.
Yeah. It's one thing if it's just visual overload, but like,
it's not, don't take it as a criticism. It was just the way I reacted to it on a purely visceral level, and then got used to it.
Yeah, it's so just like, I was watching just before we started, there's a little video on the Fox Searchlight YouTube channel where they give you a little behind the scenes of the miniatures. And I'm like, there's so many fucking miniatures I didn't even realize were miniatures.
You know, we mentioned Wes Anderson getting funding, but this is a movie that was made for $24 million.
24, yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And I just assume that the cast doesn't work for anything at all. Because each one of them could have been paid $25 million in their own right on like a Marvel film.
Yes.
But obviously not the case here. But the amount of production design and value and cinema that Wes Anderson can achieve in a budget of $25 million. I mean, my God, there's no excuse to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on stuff. Jesus, like this is like economical storytelling, and just, he is so wild. Like I was seeing shots. There's a few shots where the camera dollies through like still vignette tableaus of scenes of where like people, it's a scene of like a bar fight and everyone's held in position.
Yeah.
And I was like, each one of these is a completely different set for like a 5-second visual thing.
Yes.
And these are completely different extras that are here with costumes that probably weren't used again in the film. Like, how did you make this on $25 million? This is brilliant.
Yeah. But I think what like pushes this over, like if this was purely just like a style exercise, I would still think it's great. But I think what pushes this over the edge for me is that I was just absolutely floored at how The movie, to me, the way I see it, it's essentially about the creative process, the process of writing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the characters
well,
are writers.
It's a love letter to journalism, but I think you hit the nail on the head. It's even more than that. I felt like there was something a bit more universal about it, because I was feeling very inspired after watching this in my own artistic endeavor.
What reminded me most is Split Take fan favorite Topsy Turvy, where it's about the massive undertaking of this giant creative project. But instead of it being wrapped up in egos and central characters, it's just a bunch of little artists collaborating, practicing things, seeing if things will work. But what I was so floored at just the layered way it sort of, these writers are all different kinds of writers. Like Frances McDormand's character is like an objective journalist.
Remind myself, you are a guest at this manifestation, not my fight. Stay out of it, Lucinda. Keep your mouth shut. I have to say something.
Her job is to just observe and report. She doesn't like to meddle. She doesn't like to change history, get involved in any sort of way. Tilda Swinton is like barely a journalist. I find that funny.
But in my own experience, Rosenthaler could be quite unpredictably impulsive, meaning I refer to the pigment locker beneath his studio in the Boulevard des Plombiers. On one occasion, he grabbed me and put me in there, and
she's essentially just recapping things she likely read in another article, because that story is like, the framing device for that story is, it's like Grand Budapest Hotel-esque. It's the newspaper story, which is the story about her recollecting the story that she heard, which is the story of this painter Rosenthal in his art or whatever.
And it's funny, like contrast between the two of them is that Tilda Swinton is like very upfront, is like, oh yeah, I had an affair with this man, and it's very like, oh, I'm not neutral here at all. And by contrast, Timothy Chalamet and Frances McDormand do have an affair together, but she doesn't like mention it at all.
Yeah,
she's like, this is not my journalism.
Well, you have it's like Frances McDormand is like investigative. Tilda Swinton is like a summarization specialist or whatever. And then Jeffrey Wright, his that story was my favorite.
I recollect the written word with considerable accuracy and detail. In other spheres, my powers of retention are distinctly impressionistic. I'm known to my intimates as a most forgetful man.
I was going to ask which one was your favorite, and Jeffrey Wright's story was like, it became my favorite early on. Like, I didn't even need to cut to the story in order to like already get onto his character and like how he was presenting the whole thing.
God, I hope he joins the Wes Anderson main cast, because I thought he fucking killed it in this movie.
He did a really good job.
And his character is like, his whole thing is that he just wants to write, he wants to express himself. It's not about the story or how it factors into like everything else, because there's like a point where Bill Murray asks him like, this is supposed to be about food, isn't it? And it becomes this whole other story about a kidnapping thing.
And I think him, more than almost the other two, he disappears into his story. Like, he's there in the like, he starts out very much on the forefront in the beginning, and you're introduced to him. But as the story goes on, he almost disappears into the whole narrative, and that almost seems like the most like engrossing, almost journalistic type thing, where the actual, his voice comes through, and yet it is fully invested just in the narrative of what's going on.
Yeah, because he's not there necessarily to report. He's there to express himself by immersing himself in these stories that can then be repurposed as news. But like, what I think really ties it all together is Bill Murray's character, who's not as present as the other characters, but I really enjoy his character because he sees both the creative process as like an art form. He respects these writers. He's not just milking them for stories for money, but he is also like, he has restraint. He gives them restrictions. He understands that it's a business. So while he wants these artists to flourish, to write to their best abilities, he's also like, okay, how am I going to turn this into a paper? Even at the beginning, when they're saying that like, we can't do another double issue, he said, we're not cutting a single one of these. It's like, it's a very multi-layered analysis of just like creativity and writing and like both the business and the personal side. And I was like, I was not expecting that at all. That's fucking insane.
I think it's one of the criticisms that people have been levying at the film is that it's kind of like all over the place, and that it is something of it's an anthology. Like they're saying that it's a lot of style. You don't really get into it too much. But I think I think people who think don't necessarily think that, but like after you watch it and you think, well, that was really interesting stylistically, or like, but I couldn't get into any particular story on its own, and you're looking for something a bit more like 3-act structure type deal.
Yeah.
The thing that I admire the most about this film is that it's not that at all.
No.
And I think we need to make room for stories like this more often. Like I really admire what this film is doing, at least on a theoretical level, of portraying a journalistic endeavor of like each segment is another like person writing their article. They're completely separate and it's all coming together to like a bigger whole. Like I love that framing device, and it's such an interesting framing device and different in a way that, the Grand Budapest Hotel, it's for all of its uniqueness, it's a fairly standard framing device.
It is. It's just weirdly, it takes a while to get
it's
there.
Extra. It's
a
layering
nest doll of story. Yeah.
Of fairly standard cinematic storytelling devices. This is, I can't really think of anything quite like this.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something. The way it all comes together, as like it feels at the end. I was thinking to myself, like, this feels like a magazine version of a movie. And I think he nails that, in that it's not just, I think it would be the wrong move to make it more connected and 3-act, like give Bill Murray's character some kind of story arc or something. The kind of disconnect between that makes it very much feel like here we're reading this article, we're moving on to the next one, and each one has something different to offer. And at the end of it, that segmentation of the narrative and its uniqueness is what I think makes it ultimately work really well, because Wes Anderson is doing something new and he's doing it really well. It's not just a lazy kind of, here's 3 different articles.
Farthest from lazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so much effort and care put into it that, it might not be for some people the most emotionally investing, like they might be expecting more character and through lines. But I would like just suggest, like, give it a chance as something new and worthwhile, that, you don't always need the kind of succinct, full story arc kind of thing going on. And there is an arc, but it's
there's mini arcs. Yeah.
Well, I'd say like the whole thing is about you're getting to know all these people, so that at the end,
then it ends.
It's emotionally impactful, that last scene, because you feel some kind of connection after being through these experiences with these journalists. And when they all come together at the end to write the article together, it feels like you're part of something. You're with them in that room.
Yeah. I think a thing that I've heard a lot of people say about this, and people just say about Wes Anderson in general, so part of me feels like it's like a lazy criticism that people just jump to when they don't know how to explain themselves, but they feel that this movie in particular is very cold, distant, and lacking in emotion. And I understand that with, again, the movies I don't like. Zizou, even though I don't like it, I feel like that movie's very emotional. Moonrise, not so much for me, but like, I never understood this idea that he's not emotional, because fucking Tenenbaums and Budapest Hotel, I think, are just so powerfully emotionally resonant.
A quick addendum to what I just said, and also to add to this, is that like, even if it wasn't emotionally connecting, that's not in and itself an issue.
No, it's not. It's not.
Like, there are different ways, and we mentioned this when we were talking about Dune. There's different ways a director might approach telling a story. And I think it would be, it's wrong. Like, the criticism itself is wrong to approach a film in what you would like it to be, rather than what it's trying to give you.
Yeah. But there are certain moments in this, like, I think this is, maybe this is why people think it's so scattered, but there's these tiny little moments of just pure poetry and beauty that they don't linger on them for too long. But there's like one of them that I think is interesting is the fact that Timothée Chalamet, spoiler alert, Timothée Chalamet's character in the second story dies. He dies, and he's repurposed into like a Che Guevara-esque merch type thing. He's like a martyr for a revolution, but they're using him as a brand, which I think is just fascinating. Jeffrey Wright has this moment in the third one where he has like a discarded thing that he didn't want to put in. Bill Murray makes him read it, and he puts it in about the fact that Stephen Park, who plays the police chef who has tasted everything, finally found a taste that he had not tasted, but it was ironic because the taste was poison. And one of the most like beautiful little twists, I want to say, in the whole movie is at the end of the first big story, the Rosenthal, the painter story, when Rosenthal is given like a whole year and a half to like make an exhibition of 10 portraits. And then everyone shows up, flies from Kansas to France or whatever, and he's painted them into the walls.
Are they painted into the walls? Oh no, what has he done? You fucking asshole.
I love how also that feels like that whole scene of all the art critics and people going into the prison felt like the exact reverse of the prison escape from Grand Budapest.
And then when, God, it's such a fucking funny movie too. When Adrian Brody opens the door and all the prisoners are ready to riot and he like closes the door, but they just bust through the wall.
And I love here's the one thing I could say. It's like, this is it's a high, quote unquote, highbrow film. Like, this is not a lowbrow film. Like it has, I don't like using this word, but it's pretentious. Not necessarily as I don't mean that as a criticism or anything. But, you know, one of these moments where like they have a whole argument about Adrian Brody's character is upset because they're frescoes. And like the argument and the tension comes from the fact that they're fresco paintings and not just paintings on canvas. Like, how esoteric and bourgeoisie of an argument could you get? It's great. It's funny in how absurdly like upper class and pretentious it is, but it's pretentious in like a very lighthearted way. And I think one of the things that really works about this movie is it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like it hardly it does at its end. At the very end, you get like this film is dedicated to a bunch of famous journalists and writers, and that was like the only point where like you could feel like Wes Anderson's like, this means something. But for
I would argue.
Well,
the one moment in particular is in the last story when the father reunites with his son, which was just beautiful. It was animated. He slaps him.
Sure, like you can find meaning in it, but it very quickly moves on, and you don't take it too seriously. Like, there's not like the sense of gravitas to the whole thing of like self-importance. And perhaps that's the thing. Like it's so much style, but it's not self-important in its style.
Yes,
and that's what makes it so light and breezy and able to just kind of, you can enjoy it. And once you get used to it, as in my case, you're just kind of there to kind of have fun with it.
And the music, I think it was really good as well.
A question, a point of clarification. I wasn't quite sure. Did Rosenthal and the actor who played Zero in Grand Budapest Hotel, did they switch places in prison? Is that what happened? Or
no, that's like a little, there's so many little moments in this movie where I'm like, wait, what?
I wasn't sure what happened there.
Zero was playing, so it was like a flashback. Zero was playing the young version of him. So the flashback ends, and instead of like cutting to the present, they literally just switch Benicio del Toro with Zero. Like, instead of it being
I get, okay, so I'm here with this weird dumbstruck look on my face. I get it. I understand now.
It's just weird.
But I'm trying to figure out what I think about that.
I think that's fucking hilarious. Because again, it's the style is all over the place. It's intrusive at times, but like to a playful degree. I mean, the fucking climax of this movie is animated out of nowhere. Which is just funny.
One of my favorite little visual gags where it's like, it's not even particularly, it wasn't the funniest thing in the film, but I just love in that animated car chase where they stop and the guy flies out of who's on the front.
The guy who's on the hood of the car. Yeah.
Yeah. He flies into a window, and then they go chasing through the sewers and everything, and completely out of nowhere. You don't expect it. And then they run back and return to the cars and get back in. And that guy jumps out of the window back onto the hood of the car. Like, this whole, it's like a sidetrack, and you right back to where you started. And it was very funny. I was like, I wasn't expecting that at all.
It's just, yeah, it's such a funny movie. I can understand why people think it's overwhelming. It's too much. It's all over the place. But like that element to it made it unpredictable, which made it exciting for me. I literally never knew where it was going.
I would levy that criticism at it. It is a bit overwhelming. It's a bit too much at times. But I think it for me, it worked at the end of the day. Like at the end of the film, despite whatever kind of like, oh, I didn't quite get this, or this kind of threw me off for a little bit, it worked. And I was invested. And I really liked, and at the end, I just was left with this like nice cozy feeling that I like to get from Wes Anderson movies. And I would say that kind of manic, all over the place creative energy is it can be difficult to deal with on a first viewing, but I think this is a film that is going to reward repeat viewings.
Yeah. There's also just another little beautiful moment that I think encapsulates it all very well towards the end. When they're writing the eulogy, they're all like doing a collaborative eulogy, which I think is cute. That all the characters are working on it together. And Owen Wilson's character says, as they begin the eulogy, he said, he was born on a holiday. And somebody's like, is that true? And he's like, no, I don't think it is. It's just like, because it does, the whole thing, it doesn't matter. It's not about whether or not it's true. It's about whether or not how it makes you feel. It's not facts. It's a story. It's just little touches like that. I don't know. I love it.
You know, it's an ode to journalism, but it's also an ode to storytelling itself. And a call for the people who venture out into the world, into these crazy situations. And whether it's for journalist intentions, whether it's just news, whether it's research for a novel or for a movie or whatever, there's something honorable about that and something really fun. And I think this film taps into that kind of creative energy of real life creatives. Like there's nothing about this movie is grounded in reality. And yet I can't think of a better film that honors the artistic integrity of writers and journalists, not necessarily of journalism itself, but of the writers and the storytellers.
God, remember the part of the movie where there's like one character that Timothée Chalamet knows, and he gets sent to the military, but he escapes the military camp, and he comes back and he asks how he did it, and they explain it through a stage play.
Yeah. That's one of those things where like it seemed a little too tangential every once in a while. Stuff that I think I'm gonna appreciate on reviewings, but I might not necessarily like fully get invested in the moment of watching the film.
Yeah. I think this just harkens back to our discussion we had when we compared our favorite Bong Joon-ho movies, where you prefer the perfection and the precision of something like Parasite, and I prefer the little more tangential things like Memories of Murder. This is why, like this, I redid my Wes Anderson ranked list, and I put this third. I put it between Tenenbaums and Fantastic Mr. Fox. Shot straight up to the top.
I could see this being as high as 4 on my list. I still like Grand Budapest, Tenenbaums, and Fantastic Mr. Fox more. I think they're just better movies. Period. Yeah. But this is I'm not quite sure where it lands quite yet. It'll need another viewing. But I could see it being 4th on that list, and it's something that I return to quite happily along with those top 3.
I'm so excited for this Criterion.
Yeah, we still need an Isle of Dogs Criterion.
We do. We'll get it. We just got Budapest, and that took fucking forever.
I don't know how you feel. Slight tangent, which feels appropriate. What few years later now, because we went and saw Isle of Dogs together.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that film?
It's gotten better for me. I do like it a lot.
It's gotten more irrelevant for me.
Yeah, I think that's been a lot of the case for a lot of people. I still find it to be like one of his... until Dispatch, I would have argued it's his finest stylistically. Well, maybe Budapest Hotel. A lot of the issues I had with the story the first time around, I've actually come around on. I think it's surprisingly his most political, except for maybe Budapest.
I need to rewatch it. I just haven't gotten around to it. I haven't seen it streaming anywhere easily, which is probably why I haven't jumped at the chance.
Yeah. You don't own it?
No. I mean,
have you seen it since it came out?
No.
Interesting. Okay. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times.
It's so hard to justify getting a Wes Anderson Blu-ray when you know the Criterion is floating around in the ether in many years to come. Like, it won't be anytime soon,
It'll be a
but
while.
it's coming. It's just hard to
But-
pick up a Blu-ray. when
Yeah,
you know.
the Blu-ray I have actually has a good amount of special features. A main reason I wanted to buy it was because they did like a little mini documentary on like the makings of all the stop motion models and stuff, and I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I'd put it. It's in the middle. It's in the middle of the list, but I like it a lot. 4.5 star. I like it.
I hope they continue with I prefer the digipacks for Wes Anderson stuff.
I agree.
The more kind of, it fits the more unique feel of his style. Like, you know, this is fine enough, but I just like particularly the Grand Budapest one, which is there's almost too much in that, like where you open it and stuff just falls out, all these papers and fun little things he's done. And it's not a complaint. It's just, it feels very Wes Anderson-y to have that. It's not just the standard case.
I think that's pretty much all of them except for Budapest and Moonrise Kingdom are digipacks.
Do you want to place bets with Isle of Dogs will be in 4K or not?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
It certainly has the option to. Like
that's going to be
any new movie. Has the option to be in 4K. Older movies you have to have restored the film for that, and they have. Like, you'll read a lot of movies have been like, this film was restored at 4K or this film was restored at 2K. And obviously with the 2K, it's not going to get a 4K release anytime soon because that would require another restoration. But I think Criterion has a fair amount of backlogged titles that were originally restored at 4K and then scaled down to Blu-ray.
Would you recommend The French Dispatch?
Yes, I would wholeheartedly recommend, especially because it's Wes Anderson, such a unique filmmaking voice. You give him your money. He deserves it.
Yes.
1 hour to press.
You're fired.
Really?
Don't cry in my office.
Made its production budget back, not necessarily the full.
I mean, he's got at the very least 2 more movies coming out, so I don't think he has to worry. Busy bee. That I don't know, how packed was your theater when you saw it?
It wasn't. In fact, it was probably the safest I've felt in a movie theater so far.
Oh, nice.
Because I think I was at least 20 feet away from any individual while sitting in that movie theater the entire time. Not to say, I think there was probably at least 15 people in that theater, but it was a big.
That's a lot. Yeah,
it was a big room, but it was everyone was spread out.
For me, I was literally the only one there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nice. I sat right in the center.
Well, it wasn't nice because you would like to see more people.
Well, I showed up at a weird time. It was Tuesday at 4 p.m. Like literally right after work. I went, and no one goes then.
Yesterday, Tuesday at 7:30, which now I'm starting to just go on Tuesdays. Like, I think I'm gonna make that. It's a good day. It
is a great day for
the movie. discount day at the theater. It's usually kind of quiet.
The people who go are movie appreciators.
Yeah,
and
usually older
people to kill yes.
Which can be a blessing and a curse, because I found that older people are either A, they appreciate movies, so they're not going to be obnoxious, or B, they feel entitled and they're going to be the most obnoxious people. I.e., the theater experience Nathan and I had at Blade Runner 2049.
Did I ever tell you about the most amazing theater experience I had with older people?
Please tell me.
I went to go see First Reformed in 2018 by myself, and behind me there was a row of, it was a double date night for these old people. Two couples came in together, old man, old woman, both late 60s, early 70s, pair of them, 2 pairs of them, and the movie ends, and as we know, it's weird. It's Paul Schrader. It's odd.
Yeah.
It especially gets odd towards the end. And the credits roll, and I'm just like flabbergasted because I love that movie. And all I hear is the old people get up, and as they leave, I hear one old lady said, "I'm not sure what that was all about, but I think I liked it." It was cute.
That was cute. That's a good experience.
I heard her say that, and her husband say, he said something along the lines of, "Me too, but why was that guy floating?"
To clarify, one of my favorite theater moments of all time, it was again in that Blade Runner 2049 screening, in the moment, spoiler alert for the film, when you realize that Ryan Gosling is not in fact the special of the hero. It's in fact the memory the memory maker.
Yes, yeah.
You find out it's her in that sequence, which very subtly but visually tells you the twist of the film. It was one of those moments where like something so obvious, you're like, the film is building up to this important moment. It's telling you pretty obviously, and just we hear from right over there, the old woman leans over, is like, oh, she's the daughter of like out loud in the theater explaining what was happening in the film. And like that coupled with like the importance of the way Villeneuve tells his stories just made it so funny. It's not funny thinking about it, but like in the moment there was just some kind of like this perfect, just the cluelessness of those theater goers and the moment in the movie just kind of lined up in this very funny way. Great to remember, was not fun in the theater.
That's cinema. That's cinema.
That's cinema. That's it. Thanks. Bye.
See ya.